Welcome to Diamonds in Dumpster Fires. I'm Melie, and this is the podcast for people who are determined to find a glimmer of hope even while the fires of life are burning around them. Together, we'll dumpster dive through all sorts of topics like divorce, dating, friendships, grief, career ups and downs, and so much more. All with a sense of humor and absolutely no toxic positivity. Are you ready? Let's go. Welcome to episode 4 of Diamonds in Dumpster Fires. New year, same me, finding the silver lining without the sugarcoat. Today, we are going to talk all about New Year's resolutions, fresh starts, all of that stuff. And if you're joining me on the day that this episode is releasing, it is New Year's Day 2025. But my hope is that no matter when you're listening to this, you will get some actionable information here that you can take with you for not just New Year's resolutions, but anytime you're trying to make changes in your life. So let's get started. First of all, I just want to acknowledge the mixed feelings that come up with a lot of New Year's resolutions and fresh starts. For a lot of people, it can be super motivating, and for others, it can be really daunting. If you're anything like me, you're probably both a little excited and a little overwhelmed at the start of a new year. You might also really dislike the idea of setting New Year's resolutions because it seems really rigid. The definition of a resolution is a firm decision to do or not to do something. And if you're like me, those kinds of decisions can feel really ominous. Plus, if you're going through anything big or anything that just feels big, you might not be in the mood to create resolutions. And why should you? Just because the calendar starts over, does that mean you need to automatically start over as well? I don't think so. And let's face it, some of us are entering this new year in less than ideal circumstances. So, as you already know, I went through a divorce. This is coming up on about 4 years ago now. And honestly, every time New Year's has come around, it's felt like this big pressure to make decisions, change my life. Not only that, but my former anniversary fell in between Christmas and New Year, so that whole kind of time just seems a little sad to me these days. But I am going to share with you a story from New Year's Eve a couple years ago, because honestly, I just want you to hear from my life that when I say that I started this podcast, Diamonds in Dumpster Fires, because I was literally going through dumpster fire after dumpster fire, I mean it. So here's what happened. 2 years ago, it was a few days before New Year's Eve, and I was feeling pretty alone, pretty upset, and I was having a really, really hard time with the apps. We will get into the apps and talking all about dating and all of that in a future episode, but I was having a really hard time finding someone that I really enjoyed and that I wanted to spend time with. To make matters worse, I had been kind of seeing someone for a few months, and he had fairly recently ended things with me, and so I had taken some time off from even going back on the apps. But a few days prior to New Year's Eve, I was feeling alone, and I thought, I'll get back on there. And lo and behold, I meet someone, and he doesn't seem totally crazy. And I thought, wow, maybe this is going to be a great start to the new year. So we start talking on the app, we exchange numbers, we decide to have a phone call, and lo and behold, as I'm telling the story of what happened, because he had asked me what happened with the last person that you were dating, he turned out to be his best friend. I don't even know how this happens. There are so many people in the world, but I happen to match with the one guy that I had dated, I should add, with any seriousness at all since my divorce, his best friend. And the way he found that out is as I was sharing the story and kind of what was going on with the guy that I'd been seeing and why it didn't work out, he was like, what is his name? And I felt weird about giving his name, but then he said, is his name? And he said it, and I was like, yeah, that's it. Oh my gosh, right? So yeah, needless to say, we did not date. And I'll be honest, I was feeling pretty depressed that year. I spent New Year's Eve sitting on the floor of my living room crying. Not really about that guy or anything, but just the hopelessness I was feeling and kind of still feel a bit about dating and the apps and whether I'll meet someone. And we can talk later about, whether that's a good thing to focus on or not. And I have a lot of thoughts about that. But I am, at this point in my life, starting to come around to the idea that singleness might not be all that bad, but doing life alone around the holidays still hurts. And it's still really hard for me to get all excited about New Year's resolutions when I'm like, why, So I say all that to tell you that in this episode today, we're not going to ignore all the hard stuff, but we are going to try to find a little light, a little laughter, and hopefully a little bit of clarity on how to approach the new year. And this is just how I am approaching the new year. Of course, you do you, but hopefully you find something in this episode that's a little bit helpful for you. So the first thing I would say when it comes to approaching a new year is to honor where you are. Realize the importance of acknowledging exactly what's going on in your life, whether you're dealing with loss or frustration, or maybe you're just feeling kind of bleh, about things. It's really hard to approach the new year with any kind of excitement or joy if you're not being honest with yourself about where you're at, what you're dealing with, how you're feeling. And if you find yourself in a place where you're really feeling low, you'll hear me say this a lot on this show, but there is absolutely no shame in getting professional help if you need it. I go to therapy. I know a lot of other people that go to therapy. Honestly, I think every single person should probably go to therapy at some point in their lives. But if you think that you need help, please, please, please get it, okay? Now, I do want to acknowledge something here. I feel like a lot of the advice that comes out around this time of year, it's all focused on new beginnings and resolutions and all this stuff. It can kind of venture into the territory of one of my absolute least favorite things, and that is toxic positivity. So if you've not heard that term before, it's that sort of Pollyanna, saccharine sweetness that some people use, honestly, I think as a coping mechanism. It's where they smile and tell you everything happens for a reason when, you literally have dumpster fires burning all around you. It feels super inappropriate. It feels very fake. It kind of goes along, I think, with a lot of kind of the social media, everybody putting their shiny side forward and not really sharing, all the crazy that goes on behind the scenes. And honestly, every problem we face in life doesn't need to be turned into a motivational poster. And I'm not saying that you should be negative, but if it feels like being positive about something is forced, ignore it. I once heard someone say, before looking for the silver lining, let's respect the clouds as part of our experience. And my own take on that phrase would be, before we can find the diamonds, that dumpster fire's got to burn. So if it's burning right now, let it burn, get the help you need, and just be willing to say no to that toxic positivity. So let's talk a little bit about how do we find glimmers of positivity without this sort of forced toxic positivity. I would suggest that one way to do this is to adopt a small wins mindset. So what I mean is that instead of looking for these huge wins, huge accomplishments, you instead look for those moments of joy, peace, growth in your life. It's a great way to kind of just kickstart yourself into looking at life a little bit more positively while also focusing on some things that you can actually accomplish, things that you can bring yourself joy or peace or growth in. It can be as simple as deciding that maybe once a month you'll meet with someone for coffee. Or maybe you decide that, every 2 or 3 months you'll invest in an art class. For me, one of the things that I'm super excited about this year is learning new knitting techniques and other ways to work with fibers. I'm actually about to start learning weaving, and I'm super excited about it. So try to think of these small things that you could do that will give you that peace, that growth, without having to, say, oh, I'm going to start a business and make X number of dollars. Maybe you're just going to invest in starting to build a website. You can do these things that are smaller wins, but still wins, and will give you that dopamine hit when you accomplish them, and will also give you that joy, peace, and growth you're looking for. And I'm not saying that this year you shouldn't have big accomplishments or big resolutions that you want to achieve, but you can break it up in ways that will allow you to celebrate those little wins along the way. So let's say, for example, that one of the things you would love to do in this coming year is find a new job. Well, there are lots of steps along the way, so celebrate them. Celebrate the small wins of when you update your resume. Celebrate getting an interview. Celebrate sending a thank you note to your interviewer. By finding those glimmers of positivity without forcing it, you'll find yourself feeling gratitude along the journey. And of course, as I always say, this does not mean you have to act like everything is perfect. But you can attempt to see some of the bright side of things in the midst of what doesn't feel ideal. And when I say that you'll start to feel gratitude, let me tell you, it doesn't have to be like worthy of the best gratitude journal in the world. You don't have to worry about like feeling grateful for things that maybe you might not have thought you'd be grateful for. Let me explain if that doesn't make sense. So one way that this has actually shown up in my life is even though I would have absolutely loved by now to have found a new partner, when I hear a couple arguing when I'm out, I feel gratitude because I am not dealing with that. So even though that maybe seems like a silly example, there are ways to find the bright side of things without going toxically positive and in circumstances that might not seem so bright. I know I mentioned this a couple weeks ago, but starting a gratitude journal can really help you find those small wins. Every morning I get up, I write the date at the top of my journal and a minimum of 3 things that I'm grateful for. And let me tell you, it has helped me to just start seeing the world with a thankful heart. Because sometimes I put, my blanket as the thing I'm thankful for. So it doesn't have to be like these big major things that you're putting in there. Put your favorite snacks in there. Put, that you have a pen to write in your gratitude journal with. Whatever it is, I've just found that doing this on a daily basis has really helped me to kind of just see those small wins, see the things that I have that are good without like forcing it. So let's talk about New Year's resolutions and the idea of kind of letting go of that pressure to reinvent yourself. So I myself have reinvented myself a million times. I'll be honest. I have had multiple careers. After my divorce, I had to really, really start over my life. And to be honest, I don't want to do that every single New Year's. It's this pressure that we feel to like, ooh, what are your resolutions? What are you going to do to like change your life? But let's face it, we're not expired yogurts. We don't need to throw ourselves out and start fresh every year. I myself am like super, super tired, okay? Like I don't want to start over again. Please don't make me start over again. So what could we do instead? Well, what I am doing is setting gentle, flexible intentions instead of rigid goals. So instead of focusing on all these big outcomes, I'm focusing more on the changes that I want to make along the journey. So what do I mean when I say flexible intentions? Well, some examples could be find more healthy snacks to enjoy, attend at least one new workout class, spend at least an hour a week reading the Bible, create a playlist of feel-good songs that help when you're feeling low. Another thing that I like to do that helps me kind of get ready for a new year instead of setting those big resolutions is choosing a word for the year. There are so many ways to choose your word, but once you have it, this word functions as your theme for the year. It can really help in those moments when you're not sure if you should focus or try something new. And honestly, with my ADHD, I truly need those guardrails at times because I will throw myself into a new hobby or business idea like it's the last chance I have for happiness, only to get totally sidetracked a few weeks later. I have probably 60 different domain names to prove this point of like businesses that I started. Sometimes I go a little bit further and I will create the logo and I'll start getting merch because of course those are the things that really matter when you're starting a business, right? And then I'll get totally sidetracked or I will start a new craft or a hobby. I have stuck with knitting. Knitting and I are going to be together forever. I know this. But I have tried a bunch of other things too. I make jewelry. I have tried leatherworking. Like I said, I'm about to take a class to learn how to weave. And I'm super excited about that because I love yarn and it's another reason to use yarn. But I'm getting totally sidetracked here. What I'm saying is choose a word for the year instead of trying to choose like these big overarching goals. Because the word can function as a theme loosely. You can, of course, change it later if you need. But I love the idea of a word. And if you're kind of confused about how to choose a word, if you look it up online, there's a million ways to do this. But you can look back at your previous year and see, what are the things that have happened? What are the themes that are coming up? Is there a word that jumps out at me as something that I have experienced or want to experience a lot more? Like maybe you'll pick the word joy because you want to experience more joy. Another way you can try to find your word for the year is do a word study in your Bible. Find a few words and look up words that go with that word. So like, for example, when you look up the word love, you can see all the different versions of love in the Greek and in the Hebrew, and try to find other definitions, and maybe another word will stand out. There are a million ways to do it, but once you find that word, I highly recommend you do something fun with it. For me, I actually wear it on a piece of jewelry, but you can do whatever, fits your personality and your style. And it just kind of reminds me, it's like, this is my word for the year. This is my theme, and I'm going to focus on things that help me to achieve this theme in my life. As we start to wrap up here, and you're looking at this new year, what do I do? I just want to encourage you to try to find joy in the small, everyday things. What are like some things that could just make your day feel a little brighter? If you can't name anything off the top of your head, it's totally okay, but I'd encourage you to spend some time thinking about it, maybe even jot down a few memories of like little things that brought you joy over this past year. It can be really small stuff too. Maybe you had like a super good cup of coffee, or maybe when you were driving somewhere and you were in a rush, all the traffic lights stayed green and you got there with plenty of time. Or maybe you knit yourself a super cozy scarf that you just love wearing. I mean, I don't know anybody that's done that. But just, think of these little things, little examples of when you've had joy in your life. And then on your list of intentions for the year, you can think of ways that you might recreate that situation. Of course, you can't necessarily create the green light thing, but you can set the intention of things like finding more great cups of coffee, finding even softer, prettier yarn to knit with. The sky's the limit here. Just try to think of different kinds of things that you could add to this intentions list. And once you have them, write them down, make them kind of just a part of your year as you go forward, not like a rigid goal that you have to achieve, but just something that gives you joy and happiness in the small and everyday little things. So as we wrap up here, I just want to remind you that as we head into this new year, we've got to give ourselves permission to be hopeful but honest. Some days, the silver lining might be that we got through the day. That's it. And you know what? That's enough. So I just want to invite you to join me on social media, share your own silver linings or, funny New Year's, if you want to call them resolutions or intentions, whatever you want. I would love to hear from you. Let me know what it is that you're planning to do for your new year, whether you're like me and you refuse to reinvent yourself or whether you are going full reinvent mode, because that is completely okay too. I have done the major pivot and I know that sometimes that's exactly what you need. So thank you so much for joining me today. I can't wait until next time. Thank you for listening to this episode of Diamonds in Dumpster Fires. Stay tuned for the next episode where we'll dive into more of life's big topics with a sense of humor and without toxic positivity. Please subscribe so you don't miss an episode. And if you could leave a review, that helps the show reach more people and change more lives. Thank you so much.